Hey folks, this is Ben Kinney, publisher of Business North Carolina magazine. Recently, we held a roundtable discussion on diversity and inclusion. And I'll let you know it was one of the best roundtables I think I've ever been able to moderate and sit in and listen on. We brought in experts from various companies and associations to discuss this very important topic that all of us are facing these days as Americans and North Carolinians. The group shared some of the positive things that they are doing at their own, like I said, companies and associations in addressing diversity and inclusion issues. And the group itself was a really good variety of folks with different backgrounds who shared some of their experiences. The result was a very informative, frank conversation, and that we will be featuring in our October issue. In addition to that, I thought we'd share a little snippet of the conversation with you here in the video that's to follow. So I hope you'll come out of it with a sense that I did, which is I felt really good about North Carolina and where we are right now as a state. Enjoy. Why is diversity important in business, and what does it mean for it? But feel free to riff off of that, and in the sense that if you can give an example or something to that effect as well. And Wendy, if you don't mind, I'd kind of like to start off with you on that, because I think you have a pretty good overview just based on the size of Fidelity from that standpoint to kind of kick things off, if that's okay.
Sure. Thank you, Ben. Diversity is important. And creating sort of inclusive interactions is important to each of us, right? We're all, it's really important. Sometimes we do the shorthand and we think of everyone in terms of either one-dimensional frames or perhaps in terms of visible differences. And the truth is, more than 70% of difference is invisible. And so everyone wants to be engaged, right in the position that they're in and from the perspective that they sit in, and to have their own personal lived experience acknowledged. And so we really are focused on diversity and inclusion in terms of not only the customer, and because it's a business imperative, it really is the right thing to do in terms of engaging with all individuals across a diverse spectrum. And that starts with our associates as well, in terms of ensuring that they all are able to bring their perspective to bear on the solutions and the services that we're providing to customers. So I think it's important, and particularly at this point in time that we find ourselves in a broader, just whether it's because of the pandemic or just some of the recent events that have brought racial equity to the forefront of our discussions. We're all very vulnerable, whether it's, to the coronavirus or to some of the other factors that are influencing our lives. And so we want to create interactions that are meaningful, that are, candid. And we believe that this is about, behavior change. And so at Fidelity, we have this concept of simple starts, which is a behavior-based approach where you start with small behavioral changes that can help you create, sort of new, diverse and inclusive interactions in the workplace, but also in your customer interactions. So we talk about, changing up your diet a little bit. Who are you talking to? What are the books and movies and other things that you're watching? Are they all coming from the same sources? Have you spent time with, colleagues or, individuals that are different from you, have a different lived experience, and really then sort of engaging them directly? And I know Ben and others may have participated in the Leadership NC program, which I graduated from. Have to shout out class of 26, the best class ever. But I would just say that the concept of 3 cups of coffee in North Carolina, for those of us that have been through the program, is something that I have taken with me into the Fidelity framework to just encourage everyone, and it doesn't have to be coffee for the non-coffee drinkers, but to encourage everyone to engage in conversations with intent, with the intention of listening and learning a little bit something about that person and seeking commonality. And so if you know the framework works with, that first cup of coffee, one person shares their perspective. The second, and the other person listens. The second cup of coffee, the other person gets to share and you listen. And generally by that third cup of coffee, there's been some common ground that whether you didn't know it before, but generally reveals itself, or at least there's a seed to start to seek deeper commonality. And that's really how, I think there's so much polarization and everyone is firmly rooted in their positions, that what we need right now are conversations and behaviors that are led with intention.
Oh, you know what? I just figured out that 3 cups of coffee thing. I thought it was 3 cups of coffee at once. Man.
No.
Oh man, by the time I got out of that meeting, I was so jacked up.
Ben,
I was so
you can
jacked up.
certainly do that. if people have time, you can certainly do that. But I'm not trying to encourage the caffeine addiction. So
Right, exactly.
It's espresso anyways. Hey, Ben, I'd love to jump on what Wendy was saying. I think there's a lot of data out there that says this is important. There's a business imperative, there's an economic imperative, but for where we are right now, there is a moral imperative. And I think we have to within the business community, be brave. And, I think someone mentioned earlier on the call before things got going on the recording that it's time, it's been time. And within the business community, especially in the South, it's too convenient to push conversations about race and diversity to the side because it's not the polite thing to do, However, I think because my experience here, again, a year plus into the Charlotte region, the business community again and again is leading, has led in investments that make this place vibrant, has led not only in their expansion and growth of jobs and investment, but has really been a catalyst for how the Charlotte region has grown up. And why should we not lead in the conversations around race and inclusion and equity as well? I think that is something that, I'm proud that the Alliance is going to plant a flag in. And, as Valisha knows, the business community, together with the public sector, is at the table at the Alliance. And so for us, this work is meaningful because at the end of the day, we can make those cases. This is about the Charlotte region's ability to attract talent. This is about our ability to retain talent. And, heck, it's about our ability to grow our talent too. And so how can we as a community collectively come together to, as Wendy was saying, create the space so that we can trust and build the relationships that will continue enabling us to do business here, to do business with each other, and to create opportunities for people who deserve those shots, at economic growth and vibrancy. So, I get lit up about these things, and it's an important regional competitiveness issue. But at the end of the day, this is about people, and we have to be there for each other, and we have to lift each other up. So the pandemic has certainly uncovered disparities for people from a health crisis standpoint, a socioeconomic standpoint, and the layering, that we are seeing due to some of the systemic barriers has just put the exclamation points all over this, and it's time. So really, really encouraged by this conversation. Thank you again for hosting it with the spread of great people who I know we're all going to jump in and add more things to it. So thank you.
So if I could add just a bit to that, I agree with everything that both Wendy and Janet have said. The one piece I want to add, in addition to the moral imperative, which should be the driver for everyone, so let's just level set with that. I'm really proud to be at an organization where I know that to be the driver for our leadership. And I think that that's the case across the board here. But we are in the talent business, right? We sell time and intellect. We don't make anything. It doesn't produce anything. We problem solve. And my individual practice, I co-chair our investigations practice, which is a very collaborative problem-solving endeavor, and as is most of the work that we do at our firm. And I can tell you from personal experience, if you try to field a team to solve a problem, and everybody on that team has the exact same experience, you're going to produce the same outcomes over and over again. And so, just as a funny anecdote to that point, I had an investigation years ago. We had a team that was working on that was not as diverse as the overall firm. And they were looking essentially to see if people were talking in code to one another when they were talking to one another in these particular communications. And they had stared at these communications for an extended period of time. And they could tell that there was something going on, but no one could figure out what was happening. And so someone gives me a binder of these communications. I'm not even really on this case. And they say, can you just take a look at it? I look at it for 10 minutes. And I say, you mean other than the trap music lyrics that are contained in this binder? Right? It's a funny story because, you've got people who are doing their level best, and these are brilliant people with incredible amounts of talent, but their lived experience is very different. The same thing happens when we're talking about, by way of example, cases that involve sexual harassment. You don't have the lived experience of being a woman. There are certain things that will indicate, questions that might not be obvious. And so there's really something to the substance of the work that I don't want to get lost in here. Yes, we want to create environments where everyone feels included. And yes, we want to create environments that mirror our overall population. But the actual outcomes of the work will be so much better if you have people who are bringing those different lived experiences to the table. That's to me, that's really what matters for our business model beyond the fact that it's just plain the right thing to do.
I would add to that, and Wendy had talked about how there's tons of studies that say diversity produces a better result. I think that's absolutely true. One thing that I would tell you with just on the social injustice situation that we've all been experiencing and seeing live play out in front of us. When George Floyd was murdered, it took me a couple of days to kind of find my voice and figure out what I wanted to tell our organization. So I wrote a one-page sort of note to the organization, giving my thoughts on it. And I got hundreds of emails back from our employees talking about their experiences. And so what it did for me is it took a situation where intellectually you say, it's Minnesota, it's Wisconsin, it's somewhere else, and realize it's not somewhere else. It's look to the left and look to the right. The people you are working with are experiencing the same thing. And so, as a leader, of course, you want to just jump into action, and we were very much wanting to just do something like that day. And we took a moment to take a deep breath, and we said, what we really need to do is listen to our employees who have all of these stories and all of these horrible stories, actually, about what's happened with them. And so we had a series of about 10 listening sessions. We had them coordinated by a group of people that an organization that does this well. And we listened to those experiences, and we've come up with recommendations for action we're going to take. And in 2 weeks, I'll do another video. I do a video every 2 weeks for our company. And in 2 weeks, I'm going to do a video explaining all of the actions we're going to be taking. These are a broad set of things that basically come from the voice of our organization. And, I think that, it certainly, the George Floyd murder shocked me. I would say the stories from the people I work with, were equally shocking and horrible and despicable. And I think it really calls, it demands, attention from leaders, and it demands action from leaders. And we can't get into a mode where, 3 weeks from now, it's sort of a forgotten thing. We need to keep this kind of front and center.
Bill, from a technology standpoint, a technology company, where do you see the importance of diversity? And I know I've read some stuff that you've done on TechWire and things like that and have a pretty good idea. So tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So, look, the importance really is around points of view and perspective. If you don't have different points of view and perspective inside your organization, you're going to be monochromatic. And as a function of that, you are not going to be as economically, uplifting, profitable, whatever term you want to place on it. You're not going to get the best possible output. That's a known. That's a math equation. It's very, very simple for anyone to understand that, and it's pretty much indisputable that side of the equation. So for me, it is all about points of view and perspective. One of the reasons why our business is actually uniquely successful in this in the global digital identity space is because we actually come at it with different points of view and perspective. The number of CEOs I meet around the world when we engaged with them around partnering, when I walk into the room or engage via email and they look me up on LinkedIn and they're like, how's this guy running this global business? It's amazing. And when you actually get into a conversation with them and come into the dialogue with a different point of view than what their expected monochromatic point of view is, it actually opens a lot more doors. So I would actually say, for my particular experience, being a person of color running a global business in tech has actually been, fantastic, because it gives people, the people I'm dealing with just see it differently, and I'm able to engage differently. So perspective, point of view, number one. I think you sort of asked around, what am I engaging in? What am I seeing? One of the things I've been, since George Floyd, will say, look, first of all, it's been ongoing, throughout the history of my life. So none of this is necessarily new to me. It's been interesting because I think I heard Janet mention this from a perspective of, okay, the South, and I experienced, kind of our systemic issues in tech on the West Coast when 2 companies ago, I was COO of a company that was acquired by a West Coast firm. I ended up being the most senior employee inside that firm. But the unique thing about that, well, I say the most senior employee, the most senior African-American employee inside that firm, to be precise. And what was really interesting is they would only give me a senior director title. They claimed that they didn't give out VP titles very easily, which, okay, I took that at face value and went away. But what was more interesting was when I left the company and backfilled my role. So the person who basically replaced me inside that company, older, white male, they made him a VP within 6 months. And so you say, okay, what are the differences here? What is going on here? And it does call a lot of things into question. So it has been everywhere for a long, long time. I won't quite go so far as to say forever, but it's been here. It's been with us for a long time. Maybe forever is applicable. And guess what? It's not stopping, because and that's what's keeping it front of news. We saw a lot of action start with George Floyd. Good to see all of us start to sort of wake up and say, wait a minute, we can't just kind of keep ignoring this. We actually need to address this, but it hasn't stopped. And I think there's a great quote out there I heard over the weekend listening to a podcast. The names are changing, but the skin tone stays the same. And this is something that, as business leaders in our communities, we just have to recognize. The reason why business leaders, I think, are stepping up, because they know it's an unsustainable exercise. We cannot have communities being shut down because people are upset and protesting, every day, every weekend, every evening. We cannot continue to have disruptions in our workforce because people are concerned about being able to go to work. And likely it can get worse. It's, until we decide to address it. So one of the things I did, just to get to your original question, sorry about that, Pitt, but, felt like it needed to be said. One of the things I did was we raised my company, we're profitable. We've been fantastically profitable for a few years now, but we recently raised a strategic round of capital. And what we did was we took that money and said, well, wait a minute, we're sitting on this money in the bank because we're going to be spending it for some growth initiatives, not immediately, but over time. Why do we have it sitting in this large bank account at Silicon Valley Bank, which is a traditional tech bank based out in California? Why do we have it there when we've got these community banks that could actually put that money to work immediately in the community and help impact the community? And it costs us nothing to do that. And, I had that idea. And frankly, it wasn't that original an idea. I took that from Netflix. Netflix, they took a first step. They basically said, we're going to make a big donation to the United Negro College Fund. Great step to take, but it's kind of a classic thing big corporations do, is they make a donation and then they can say they've done something. But then what Netflix did to follow that was more interesting. They said, we've got hundreds of millions of dollars in cash that's basically sitting in the bank. We're going to actually reallocate a chunk of this cash into the communities by putting it directly to work inside of African-American owned banks. And I was like, that makes perfect sense to me. And why can't we do that at a local level, especially given that Mechanics and Farmers Bank, the second oldest, I believe it is, African-American bank in the country, happens to be based here in the Triangle. It's a North Carolina-based bank. They're doing North Carolina-based lending and primarily in communities, that are not reached by traditional banks. So for us, it was an easy button issue to talk to my CFO and my co-founder, and we said, I said, look, we're doing this. And they agreed that we are doing this. And we moved $3 million over there within a week. And that's, for us, there's no hitch to the business, no impact or anything. But what we've also seen now is others are starting to do that. And that's, amazing. I think Pendo now has officially announced they're a local tech company significantly larger than ourselves from a cash raise perspective. They recently, as of today or this week, have moved $3 million as well into Mechanics and Farmers, and others are K4 Connect. They've done the same, and they actually ran some PPP loans and other activity through Mechanics and Farmers. And this is the type of thing that we need to do at a grassroots level. So I tend to be long-winded, tell stories, but there's the answer to your question. That's one of the big things, moves we're making on that front. And others are coming.
I'll tell you what, it was a lot, but chock full of information there, my friend, and good information too. So thank you for that. Really appreciate that.